Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
Hi, I'm Jessica Faust.
We are literary agents at BookEnds who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. We recently did a fun current events publishing video, and we're doing another one. So unless you live under a rock, you may have seen that Elon Musk has put in an offer to buy Twitter, whatever the business legal jargon of that situation is. But he put in an offer to buy Twitter, and the interwebs have gone crazy.
It's not even the interwebs, it's the whole world. Even off the interwebs, they're going crazy.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion from Elon Musk about bringing free speech back to Twitter, and honestly, just look at his Twitter timeline so that you can see all of that. But a lot of folks online have been discussing leaving Twitter and what the future of an Elon Musk Twitter might look like in terms of the people that can come back to Twitter and the way tweets are monitored, and all of that stuff will hopefully not, but inevitably change.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that it will change Twitter in big ways. And yeah, people have lots of opinions. There's lots of conversations and articles about this. But right. What we haven't seen a lot of and have been asked about is how will this impact not just publishing Twitter, but how will this impact the publishing business?
Right. So if you're following us, you might have come to us through Twitter, where there is a huge publishing community of writers, editors, art directors, agents, everything in between, really. There's a huge community on Twitter for our industry. And I think there's a lot of concern about if people start leaving in droves, what changes? Right. So we want to share our thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I don't think we agree.
No, not probably on details. I mean, go for it.
Well, I think it'll change a lot. I think first of all, I think take all the claims of leaving Twitter with a grain of salt. I think that if anybody could leave Twitter as quickly as they say they could leave Twitter, a lot less people would be on Twitter right now, me included.
Yeah, there's a lot of hiatuses, but not a lot of shut down accounts.
Yeah, well, truthfully speaking, right, it's a social network that it expands well beyond publishing. But people don't just always leave social networks. So, I mean, if there were some huge, drastic, concerning changes, I can see Twitter sort of taking that nosedive, but I don't know that people will leave as immediately as projected online. But with publishing, with Twitter being such a big hub for publishing, I can see if those people start changing, some big changes. We talked a little bit before starting the video on how it's where a lot of networking happens, especially in a pandemic digital world, where conferences are not as common. It's where a lot of networking happens, myself included. For writers, it's how agents have a very public brand. It's how we connect with editors. Not all agents, but it's how a lot of us connect with editors. So I think if people start leaving that, it will naturally have those ripple effects through the way some agents do business and the way writers are connecting with people in the industry and getting a lot of information.
I disagree.
I know.
I disagree to a point. I mean, I agree that for a lot of people, it's going to change the way they do business. I think there's a lot of agents, and I'm just going to say agents, but I think people in general who depend and rely heavily on Twitter, maybe too heavily. You have to remember, I started in publishing before Twitter existed. I started before publishing had email. So I think that I know that networking and the publishing business and how we connect with each other has changed dramatically over the years and continues to change. I actually don't really feel I network over Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I have 40-some thousand followers, but I don't feel that Twitter is where I network or connect with the people I need to connect with. And whether that's authors, I feel a lot of authors have found me through Twitter, but I certainly don't feel I network with editors through Twitter at all. And as far as the authors finding me through Twitter, before Twitter, there was the blog. And I would argue that more authors find us through YouTube than they are through Twitter these days.
don't
I
know.
think we promote YouTube through Twitter, but I rarely hear in queries that they're connecting with me on Twitter as much as I hear that they're connecting with me on YouTube or through the blog.
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is, there are a ton of different avenues. It's just that Twitter has been the easiest one for a long time. Part of this conversation has come up because people are saying, well, how is this going to change publishing as a business? And what I can honestly say to that is I don't think it will at all. I mean, at the end of the day, books are still going to sell and agents are still going to sell them and all of those things are going to happen. And nobody needs Twitter to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree with that part. I agree that the book business will continue to chug along, but I think there will be a huge disruption in how a lot of people work in terms of like MSWL will change, right? Like I post tweets on my MSWL more frequently than I might go in and update my bio if it's just like a super specific thing. Or like I think because Instagram and YouTube are not text-based platforms, that it's a lot harder to sort of disseminate that information the way we used to. And the same thing for editors coming to us. I've seen a ton of art directors who will put out a call on a tweet, like link me your portfolio, which is something that you can't do on Instagram. Of course, you can just comment and they can click on your portfolio. But I just think that there's a way that we've started to use Twitter as a business tool that when that's taken away, I think a lot of people will be scrambling for how do we do this? And just to be clear,
well, I'm not going to argue that I think a lot of people will be scrambling.
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, my criticism on that goes to conversations we've had previously about our website. Yeah. And how we've talked to authors about the website, that the only thing we own and can control is our website. And so if we are dependent on a third-party social media and not dependent on the things that we actually own and control, that's a mistake we're making. You know, if we are depending on Twitter to connect with editors rather than actually physically emailing editors or setting up calls or things like that, that's a mistake I think we're making in publishing, that we are relying on a third party. And I'm not implying you're doing that because I know you're doing all of these other things, but we're dependent on a third party that we have no control of. And this is what happened with Facebook, right? Like a number of years ago, everybody in publishing had to be on Facebook and you had to connect with your authors on Facebook and you had to do all of this stuff through promotion on Facebook. But within the last 5 or more years, everybody's left Facebook. And
yeah, and I think every social media platform has the ability to be used as a marketing tool or, you know, a business tool in some respect, right? But I think with Twitter being text-based as opposed to photo-based, it's just been that naturally easy one to use and to share our thoughts on, and however people use it, right? Air grievances. And I think what it's created was a very interconnected publishing. And if that goes until there's something new, it'll feel a lot less interconnected, which might not be a terrible thing, but I think that part of, you know, it's a very relationship-based industry, and I think if that were to be disrupted or collapse, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's very alarmist. I'm not sure that it's going to happen, but I think that it's still something that would change a lot.
Well, I mean, the truth is, the most of what I've seen that people are alarmed about Elon Musk taking over is really not going to directly impact publishing Twitter in the same way it is going to directly impact other, you know, like journalists and things like that. I mean, the truth is now we can presumably edit our tweets. We would all like that in publishing. I mean, there's aspects of that I think, and I think what you said at the beginning is really flat out the truth. Not everyone's going to leave. There's a lot of people, they're all set to run. They're going to leave. This is going to be terrible. The sky is falling. But unless there's another place for people to have these connections, nobody's going to leave.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that our conversation now is like the world is ending, the sky is falling, Chicken Little style. I think it's more like analyzing how Twitter has been used in publishing and how that can change. And I don't really anticipate it changing, but I think that if there were this sort of mass exodus, a lot will have to inevitably change about how many people work.
Well, and I think the concern is, will a huge change in Twitter, will people leaving Twitter or changes that make it more difficult to connect with people have a larger impact on publishing? And I think that, as you said, it'll have a huge impact on some people and the way they work and the way they connect with people. But I think what's important to remember is there's probably about at least 50% of publishing that's not on Twitter.
Right.
And that are, and the truth is, like, I can look around and some of the people in publishing who are representing the biggest authors and making the biggest deals are not on Twitter.
I think the people that it would have probably affect the most would be our viewers, would be authors who are trying to find new information and new people. So it would be less of like, follow all these people, and as things pop up on your timeline, and more of searching people out and doing the legwork of finding the information that may have already been super easy to find on Twitter, or at least like click through on Twitter. But
to assume Twitter is the only place you can find that, I think, is a little, like you said, alarmist, because the truth is there are great resources like Query Tracker, which is probably full of much more updated information, more correct information, more details than you can easily find on Twitter.
Yeah, and then also I think, again, I'm just going through my head on all the things, but also that grassroots of, publishing news, right? Like not everybody is subscribed to Publishers Marketplace or can access Publishers Weekly, but there's that, like the infamous Twitter thread of publishing news that's how many people are keeping up to date on what's going on in the industry, what books are coming out, what books are, something to watch for, or trends, or all and everything in between, the drama, all of it. I think it takes away that it's become a news source, which I think, even for politics and everything else, where that's what it's become.
But I wonder then, in publishing, if we're relying so heavily on Twitter to be a news source and to update deals and things like this, it seems to me what I'm hearing is that we have huge holes in publishing that are rife for somebody to jump in and fill. Like without, it seems like if there's publishing news that is not accessible to authors, then there's a huge opportunity for somebody outside of Twitter to make this kind of information available. That, what I'm hearing is maybe Publishers Weekly and Publishers Marketplace aren't enough. That but maybe we're relying a little too much on a place like Twitter when there's, I don't know, because all that information.
But I think what would be missing is community. Like, I think it's not like verified, researched information that they're looking for on Twitter, right? But like, this happened to me with this experience.
But all of that used to exist before Twitter.
Yeah, on the SFWA Right Everywhere, right?
Well, there was multiple places. There was that. There was the Absolute Right group that was an excellent community. And there's one more that I'm missing. And I know the people who ran it, Karen and Chris, and what was the name of it? There were multiple sources like that where it was a real sense of community, and you could go in and, similar a little bit to what Query Tracker is, but I think much more transparent than people are comfortable posting on Query Tracker, that was full of that kind of information. Yeah. And there were forums and conversations, and they would bring in speakers virtually and things like that well before Zoom.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting to see how in just like the past 5 or 6 years, it's become, the social network has become such a huge piece of publishing, I think.
I guess what I'm saying is this stuff has always existed. It's just right now it's on Twitter.
Right, and it's in one.
But if everybody leaves Twitter and Twitter goes away,
somewhere else.
This has all existed. There were communities and groups on Facebook that used to do this.
Right.
And then they all moved to Twitter. Well, if Twitter is destroyed, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. This community and these people are going to move somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like we created social networks because we're social creatures, right? So I think if one goes away, we will naturally find another way to do it. It might take a little while. Things might be a little hectic in the meantime, but I think
I
it's
don't
inevitable.
think so. I think it'll be a smooth transition. Nobody will even notice it. I don't think people will jump ship on Twitter if they don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those where things open up, people gradually shift over. And I think it's sort of like how Twitter became from Facebook. Like I didn't jump from Facebook and join Twitter.
Right.
Like I was on both of them. And over time, I discovered Facebook was less and less what I wanted to be involved in for a variety of reasons. And that Twitter was a better resource and a better place for me to be. And it just got to be like another week went by and I haven't been on Facebook. Then 2 months went by and I hadn't been on Facebook. Right. And now it's been something like 5 years.
And I haven't been on permanently.
So I think it'll be that same thing. I don't think it's ever been. I mean, I think even with these writers forums, yeah, like even Absolute Right was still going when Twitter was going. But then I think over time, and I don't know the existence of it now, but I think over time, things like that, people just sort of transition away and move on to the new thing.
Yeah. So can I just say, I don't want another one. I don't want another platform. So can we all just like figure it out?
But you'll move away. I mean, we have this conversation about social media all the time here.
Yeah.
Which outlets we still have. You know, we still post things on the BookEnds Facebook. It's just not as active as Twitter because that's where we are. Right. But we just move from one to the other. It's not like we are now trying to manage them all, which I would recommend to everybody. Don't try to manage them all.
And have a website. If you really wanted to take away from our musings on this topic, have a website so that everybody can find you somehow. Because you never know. A billionaire might try to buy Instagram next.
Yes, well, Instagram's owned by Facebook, so they already did.
It's already owned by a billionaire. You're right. I can't keep track of all the billionaires.
And they're done.
So, well,
and everybody freaked out about all the changes to Instagram too before.
I continue to freak out about all the changes to Instagram. So,
anyway, I think in the grand scheme, publishing is going to be fine, but change is scary.
Change is scary and irritating. So,
and we really have no idea. Everybody's speculating and freaking out, and we have no idea.
No, everything is still up in the air for sure. So, well, we hope this was helpful and maybe validated some of your feelings about the whole situation. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time.
And on Twitter.
And on Twitter. You're real proud of that.